My first exposure to Oklahoma was probably as a kid. You know, I heard the record, my parents played me the record, and I saw the '79 revival. The music, the words were in my memory, in my consciousness, and like a lot of people, I thought I knew the show. When I started to work on it, I found out I didn't. Now, why I started to work on it was a kind of instinct or a whim. I think if I know why I'm doing a show when I start out to do it, I probably shouldn't do it. I discovered there was way more to this piece than I thought was there. I saw a story about community, the nature of the outsider, the role of the outsider in a community, and the need for a community to create an outsider that I had no idea that was in this piece. I've seen probably more shows in this theater than any other theater on Broadway. I first came I was 10 years old, saw a play called Loose Ends here, and I've seen plays many, many times. So, you know, I feel really at home here, and I feel really welcome here by the whole community. You know, when we did it at St. Anne's, we didn't really know where we would take it, if it would go on, and then we looked at a bunch of different theaters, and then this really felt right, and in conversation with Laura, it was clear that this was the place to do it.
One of the challenges of moving to Circle from the other spaces is that every other space we made, we were in a really big room, and we made our own room inside of it. And this is the first time where we've been sort of in conversation more with an existing room, which is great. The first thing was we can do it here if we can cover it all in plywood, so that it's both our room and it's Circle, and it's sort of how they meet. And originally the plywood literally just came from us. It was a conversation about what's the container, and ultimately it was like the point is that it's a container. The point is not what it's made of. So what's the sort of simplest, most honest way to do that? And we're like, make it out of plywood, right? That's what you would do.
It was really important to us that we were able to cover the walls, cover the floor, cover the space beneath the seats, and really do all of that, and that the audience walks in and they're in a space that's transformed and doesn't feel like any other space they've been in. You know, we work really hard to get the show the way we want it to look, sound, and feel. If all those things align, then what it means and what a stamp on it is, I shouldn't be the one to say. You know, I really think that we work so hard to get it the way we want it to be, and then we do it, and then it belongs to the audience. And if I tell you, this is what I think it means, or this is the stamp, I don't think I should be allowed to do that, because then you're gonna view it with that frame in mind, and I think you should be able to have your own experience of it.
You can break the set down pretty easily into its elements, right? It's like the plywood container, and then the mural and the guns I think of as a pair, and then the fringe above. The point was, this is the place where there are guns and there's violence and there's danger, and it became really important that it had to feel like too many guns. So getting to the number and the placement of it being an uncomfortable number. The fringe in some ways is like literally the color, and there's no other color in the set. I think the fringe is sort of like the joy. I also didn't really think about it till it existed, but because of basically HVAC, the fringe is always moving. In this production that can be really still, we have this fringe that's always in motion above the actors.
Yeah, the food thing's always been a part of it. From the student production, I think there was a kind of idea about dinner theater and like rethinking what dinner theater is, and wondering if there's some kind of connection between why people go to the theater and why people sit down for a meal together.
I lied when I said the fringe was the only color, because the crock pots are the other color, which visually are really important. And then also, obviously the crock pots house the chili, which we all eat at an intermission. It was interesting when we moved here, we talked about, do we need the chili? And once you start to deconstruct it, like maybe it comes from off stage, it all unravels. Like eating the chili together at intermission and having that be the real chili that's been on stage is it actually sort of holds it all together in a way.
I think one thing that happens in this production is that there's a kind of tension between the actor and the role that they're playing for everybody. You know, it's not the typical ingenue, it's not the typical bad guy, it's not the typical hero. So there are these ways in which masculinity and femininity are kind of in play, and there's a kind of distance between the actor and the role. And you know, I think everybody in the show is both themselves and the part they're playing at the same time. I think what's interesting for me is like that wasn't an intention, that was a result. You know, I didn't set out to do that. I cast the people that I thought were the best and that moved me. And once we were doing it, I went, oh, there's this thing that's going on. And that's kind of cool. Well, I love that I keep learning things about it, that it's incredibly generous, that it surprises me all the time, that it's given material for these amazing actors to come out and fill it every night. I don't get bored with it, and I'm kind of stunned continually by the skill of Rodgers and Hammerstein, the way words work with music, and just how much is in the story.
I had never seen the show until I worked on it. I don't know how else you do Oklahoma. In terms of really just reading the text and just the thing we've created, this feels like the only way to do it.
It sounds very simplistic to say it, but it's really like we're just trying to take the material seriously, and when you do that, it's incredibly rewarding. And there's a story here, and it's a story of depth and nuance, and it's complicated.